It's Monday, which can only mean one thing. It's another episode for Mo Mondays, and I have a very special guest in this week's episode. Stay tuned. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mo Mondays. In this week's episode, I have a very special guest, and I'm just going to bring him onto screen with me. Hopefully, everybody remembers this particular person. Wrong way. There we go. Greg. Greg's our special guest this week. Greg Jeffries from Visual Displays. Greg, it's an absolute pleasure to have you join me in this week's episode of Mo Mondays. How are you, Greg?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me back. I had such fun last time. Really looking forward to this.
Good. Hey, you know what? I had a lot of comments from that last video that you put up. You know, people were like, "Wow, displays. We need to stop thinking." We were talking about room design and room layout, right?
Yeah.
But also, always what seems to happen is, and this is just going with kind of past history and speaking with customers, is we spend Microsoft, OEMs, resellers, we spend a ton of time looking at rooms and designing personas and thinking about what kit to put into the room. But always, that last part of the conversation seems to be displays, and everyone seems to forget about displays, right? And 9 times out of 10, the number one question that I get asked is, "Hey Mo, what displays do Microsoft certify?" And the simple truth is, Microsoft does not certify any displays, right? I mean, yes, we have a category called Teams displays, but that's something completely different. It's not actually the front of room display inside of a meeting room space. And the only real thing that Microsoft stipulates around front of room displays is make sure it's CEC, HDMI. So it allows the sensors to kind of power down and power back up again. But there's a lot more to it, right? And I've seen quite a few posts that you've been putting up, Greg, around displays and stuff. And I think this Mo Mondays episode deserves a Greg Jeffries special to talk about displays. And I guess my question to you really is, Greg, displays, what are the things that, customers and resellers for that matter should be looking at when thinking about the types of displays we should be putting as part of our Teams rooms layout?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, thanks for that. I think that displays are effectively the elephant in the room. The whole game has changed so much in the last couple of years, and the innovations, particularly that Microsoft have brought the display really into focus. And it's really kind of highlighted that the old ways, the ways that we're kind of used to doing things, just sticking a panel up on the wall, very often that just doesn't work anymore. As you know, I work with the Avixa's standards group. I was leading that until earlier this year. And we have standards for this. But the point about the standards is that, well, first of all, is to be clear what you mean by a standard. But for us, we talk about performance specification standards, performance standards. What we're looking for is to what the image should be, what its characteristics should be. We're completely agnostic about which technology delivers it. It's so long as the image can be delivered in the right size, resolution, quality, and so forth, then the technology is, if you like, is a secondary consideration. So that's the kind of I think the thing that people need to swing a bit, because we very often, because we're in nerd world here, aren't we? We're all ready to kind of like go for a certain brand or go for a certain thing. And you said, no, step back a minute and actually think about the thing and think about at high level what's needed before you get down to that kind of level of decision making.
Yeah, and I think, just to kind of bring it to life. And apologies if you hear babies in the background, right? Yeah, twins, right?
He's just showing off, people.
But actually, I think, what is it? A year and a half ago when Microsoft announced Front Row, and I think Front Row is kind of what changed the game in terms of, resellers and customers thinking, wow, you know what? We need these big 16:9 displays, and a lot of customers just started putting them up without any kind of considerations. And I know you did a lot of work around Front Row and kind of looking at what we should be looking at, and I'd love for you to just have your thoughts around what you think about Front Row, and actually what should we be thinking at? Should it just be a complete matchup of what Microsoft put onto the concept video a year and a half ago? What are the key things customers and resellers for that matter should be looking at?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the launch of Front Row really kind of threw a rock into the puddle. It made some waves, and it made people really think again. a lot of people even now are still kind of thinking, well, shall I do front row at 21:9? Shall I do 16:9? I mean, just to cut to the answer of that, in fact, you can have both. Using a good size projected image, you can switch between 16:9 and 21:9, and that's something that people do not understand, and that needs to be said very clearly at the front end of this. But really, what you can see on this slide is that actually choosing a display is actually quite a complicated thing, and and you've got that kind of like a flow, a hierarchy of decisions and specifications that you have to make as you come to the point where you can actually think about which display to buy. And the most important thing of all is getting the size right. Because if people can't can't see at the back of the room, then all of the technology is wasted. And getting that right, as you can see there, we've now into the situation where the content window is only like 60-70% of the height of the overall height of the image. And that means that we need to scale up the image size by that. And then you look at the other parts of that image and you see that it's not a bright image at all, but it's got really good black levels, really good contrast ratios, because these have to be displays that you can sit and watch and work at all day long without getting eye fatigue. A lot of the flat panels and so forth, they're really often better suited for signage applications, and they really have to be wound down if they're going to be used. And another thing is the fact that that what we're seeing there is like a vision piece. It's a visual, it's the CGI thing, but it really lays out in a beautiful way what's needed from an image. And the other part of that, which people don't think about very much, but it's like Pandora's box. Once you notice it, you can't stuff it back in the box. And that is the use of matte screens, non-reflective screens. People have got kind of habituated to having shiny displays on the wall, and that's just such a barrier to having good meetings with remote participants.
Greg, I'm one of those people, right? Ever since you put a post up about reflections, I see everywhere now. Like everywhere I see reflections, and I'm like, well, you need a matte display across there. It's quite interesting, and sorry to kind of just chime in here. When we look at front row, we generally think of this one kind of big display. I know in recent months, Microsoft did some updates to the front row layout where it can be used either on a single screen and it kind of reduces the size and puts less information on screen. You can have dual display. And again, there's a certain need or a certain scenario where dual display is a better option to utilize front row. And then, of course, the all singing, all dancing, single big 16:9 display, but taking all of this into account with black levels and non-reflective kind of screens, etc. Gets pretty deep.
No, absolutely. I think that the front row thing has really caused caused people to think again. But one thing I really would like to emphasize is that if you've got a good size display, and you're doing it with projection, you can switch between 16:9 and 21:9. And as you say, Mo, I mean, front row is a developing thing. It's like Teams. The whole Teams environment. It's a constantly evolving thing. Because the way I see Teams is, if you like, it's like a trapdoor into the bigger Microsoft kind of universe of all of the things that we have going on in 365 and communication. So Teams is always going to be much more complicated than just a regular kind of video VC app. And I think what we're going to see, and what we are seeing, is, as you referred to, is that front row itself will develop. There'll be different screen layouts. There'll be much more user choice, and it's just going to get better and better, I think.
Yeah. And kind of, I saw this slide that you put up here as well, saying that, Microsoft recommends projection across here as well. And I think, the one thing that I've learned today is that is where you've said you can switch between 16:9 and 21:9 very easily by using a kind of projection. But call me naive, I guess. When I think projection, I think of low light. I think, hey, you got to have a dark room in order for you to have a best image. Is that the case today, or has projection moved on in the sense of now you can actually have really bright projectors to work in a multi-purpose type of room?
No, you've gone straight to the heart of it there, Mo. That is such a fundamental point to make, is that, people are so used to projection and the kind of the old-fashioned sort of projection, quite a weak projector onto white screen, where the whole thing is pretty washed out and completely unsuitable for these kinds of hybrid environments, and that's completely legitimate. What people don't realize is that in recent years, there's been massive advances in laser projection technology, and also advances in ambient light screen projecting technologies. So we're talking about really great quality projectors that can be maintenance free for 20,000 hours. They can sit on an estate, just on a state of kit, just the same as other flat panel displays and DVLED displays can. And then we're talking about projection screens that are black until projected light hits them, and that sort of a combination means that it's completely opened up the possibilities of what's possible to do. And it's one of those things. I work very closely with Microsoft and my other colleagues within Epson, and people are so used to these kind of photoshopped images of people, looking at a display that's photoshopped absolutely perfect, and this great ring, a horseshoe of smiling faces at this display, and people are cynical now. And so this last year, and looking forward to ISE this year, it's very much about doing show and tell. People really have to see how extraordinarily good a proper projection display can be. And that's kind of a thing that I'm on a mission. Microsoft really did a big thing to make that move, but now honestly, there's some backfilling that's required, and there's some education and support that the channel needs, and that's what I'm working on. Like I say, very strongly with my friends and colleagues within Microsoft and with Epson and so on. That's just trying to put it out there. How good we can make Teams rooms.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, right? I mean, I can't wait for ISE. ISE is going to have some crazy tech out there, and we'll get to see how projection has moved really far. But of course, we know that all types of displays that can be used, whether you're using dual display, single display, projection for that matter. Yeah. What are the top 3 tips you would give, when you are kitting out a meeting room space, and then you start thinking about the display or the front of room display that you should be using? Yeah. What are the 3 tips that you'd recommend for partners and customers that like to think about?
Well, I mean, it's a long list there, but I think it's like desert island discs. If you've actually got to choose your top, then I think it's pretty straightforward. First of all, get the size right, and in practice, that just means getting as big a display as you possibly can. We use this disc as standard in Avixa, and it sets the minimum image size. And that's and really really as large as you can go, the better, because if you look at that bottom row there of the remote participants, to get those good people as close to life size as possible, that really adds something to a meeting. So size is the first thing. The second thing is to think about the viewing positions in the room relative to the screen. It's all very well having a good image size and so forth, but people have got to be able to see it comfortably and also to be seen. Remember that the VC camera is the VIP presence in the room, and you want to make sure that you can see and be seen in the room layout. So viewing positions is really important. And the third thing, which we've referred to already, is just avoid shiny screens. Once that really is going to make any rooms that go in now are going to age really quickly if people haven't got these anti-haze or these haze screens or matte screens like we use in AR projection. So those there are lots of other things I could say, but definitely that's my top 3, Mo.
I love it. Thank you. So the three top tips, you've heard it from the master himself. Those are the things that you absolutely should be looking at. And I've learned a few things as well, right? The shiny thing, making sure screens ain't shiny. I notice it everywhere I go now. So that's quite key. That's a really good point. I love the see and be seen, so don't just think about what it looks like inside of the room. You also need to think of the remote participants, the other side of it as well. And and if you are using the front row layout, not everybody does, but if you are using the front row layout, then to make that size relative to the people inside of the room as well. And what was the first tip? The first tip was go as big as you can get, right? That's that's perfect. So there you have it, guys. 3 tips. Absolutely do have a look. Greg Jeffries, of course, is available on LinkedIn, part of Visual Displays. We'll drop Greg's LinkedIn profile link hopefully down in the comments below as well. Any questions around that, please do reach out to Greg. Greg, thank you so much for this week's episode, for joining me and giving us your words of wisdom around displays. I'm sure we can continue and talk for hours and hours and hours, but again, I just want to say thank you so much for blessing us on this week's episode.
Thank you, Mo. It's been a real pleasure. I always love talking to you.
Good stuff, good stuff. And guys, thank you so much. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below. We do check Microsoft. Greg will be looking as well, and I'll be looking as well. Any comments that you put on down below, any questions that you have, please do drop them down below. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that little bell icon so you get to see all the videos that we push out on a weekly basis. With that, no doubt, we shall see you again next week.